Hey everyone, welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's December 28th, 2022. My name is Eric Osterman and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse is a DevOps accelerator. We help companies conquer AWS using our proven blueprints for Terraform. If you're starting from scratch, you're just not happy with what you have today, that's a perfect reason to reach out to us. Go to cloudposse.com/quiz. Again, cloudposse.com/quiz to book a session with me directly. I'll show you what the future could look like. So for those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. If you're curious about Cloud Posse or any of our open source tools and modules, this is a great place to ask. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by heading over to cloudposse.com/officehours. That's cloudposse.com/officehours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support what we do, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. Can everyone still hear me? Because like a bunch of my windows just closed sporadically here. Hello, hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. I think it was that my camera crashed. That's what it was. And then everything went away. So you get this nice up angle now. I'll fix that later. All right. So with that said, I don't remember where I left off. We'll just jump into announcements for this week here. So yeah, first announcement is Atmos has added support for sources of variables in inheritance. Now, I know many people don't use Atmos yet, so a little bit of background here. Atmos is a tool for managing complex workflows. It has opinionated workflows support for Terraform Helm file, but you can use it literally for any tool out there. One of the things that Atmos does really well is this concept of inheritance. So you can have configuration settings broken out into multiple files and logically represent basically a data model of your configuration, so you don't have to duplicate settings and configuration everywhere. We built this tool because it's ideally suited for very large environments, possibly thousands of Terraform root modules and so forth. So what this change does is make it easier to understand when you're looking at the output of the final configuration or Terraform stack configuration, where those settings came from. So in this case, we're saying that a particular variable, in this case, one called enabled, was defined in multiple locations. And this is the order of inheritance that happened in order for that. And that the final value that it got inherited to true was to true. So we see here it was false, here it was true, here it was true. So the final value was true. Why this is exciting, I realize this is a wall of YAML, is combined with something else that we do in Atmos. So Atmos has full support for REGO or Open Policy Agent. And why this is cool is now you can set policies that enforce that certain teams can override certain values, but other teams cannot override those values, or maybe no team can ever override these values. So all of that can now be expressed in OPA, in a policy language, to allow teams some degree of autonomy while still having guardrails on what can be changed or not. This is ideally suited for more complex enterprise environments, and this is where this feature it has originated. And yeah, any questions on this before I move on? All right. The next announcement, a lot of exciting Christmas announcements here came out. One is that LastPass had probably the worst breach yet. My understanding is the entire backup of all of their encrypted vaults has leaked. But those encrypted vaults, really, it's only the sensitive part of the secret that was compromised, was encrypted, but metadata about that secret, for example, non-sensitive information like the website, were in plain text. So why this vulnerability is now so scary is anybody who's ever been a LastPass customer anybody who is a LastPass customer, all of your encrypted passwords have been leaked out to somebody who probably shouldn't have them. And using brute force attacks, those can be guessed. Now, brute force password decryption has gotten so good these days that it wouldn't be absurd to think that something like this could be cracked in a matter of years, at least for targeted sites and so forth. There's I don't know how well these were salted, for example, or whatever other good techniques are out there, but using some of those pre-generated data sets of encrypted passwords, they can do really fast brute force searches for passwords. Awesome. Yeah. Anybody have something else they saw in this announcement for LastPass? This is not the first incident like this with LastPass. It's happened several times. So I don't know. If you haven't considered moving away from LastPass, now might be a good time. It's not going to change anything, but their track record hasn't been the best. They have had a good track record of announcing their breaches, so give that to them. Not exactly the track record I'd like to have, though. Similarly, there was another critical CVE that came out for the Linux kernel. Quick way to check if your systems are affected is just to run this modinfo command, and if it comes back that the module wasn't found, you're good. But if it does, make sure you've upgraded to at least 5.15.61, as this is pretty much as bad as they get, apparently. Any other announcements related to this kernel CV? All right. Next announcement is an alternative for KubeCost. So KubeCost it's impressive how quickly they came out on the scene and started providing really interesting cost visibility for services running inside of Kubernetes. They've gone on and done really well as a business, but it's a pricey product in the end. So there is a open initiative through CNCF apparently called OpenCost now that does this, and it is the first time I'd heard of it, but it's attempting to help you figure out chargebacks basically within your cluster to individual namespaces, as we see here. The problem is when you are running Kubernetes like EKS or something in AWS, you have understanding how much your cluster is costing you. But if you have multi-tenancy, for example, different products or business units running within that cluster, it's not trivial to figure out what those are costing you as a percentage of the aggregate spend of your EKS cluster. With this, you're at least getting some estimations of what that is. All right. Any questions on OpenCost? And the next announcement, I was super excited. RB on our team brought this to my attention. This has been such a long-standing pain point with RDS, is that when you provision it, you're required to pass a master username and password as a credential. And if you're using Terraform, that means that is now in your TF state backend. And we want to avoid having any master credentials, of course, in the Terraform state backend. With this change, RDS can now read directly from Secrets Manager those credentials, and the engineers or administrators provisioning the database never need to know what those credentials are. So I like this separation of concerns. We haven't kicked the tires on it yet, but this is a very welcome feature. Anybody have something to add to this one?
I really like it. And in the past, I think the CDK was deploying a Lambda to do this. So we got rid of the Lambda. I know a bunch of people were using a custom Lambda with AWS Secrets Manager to do this, and it's lovely to finally see it integrated.
So basically, ignoring lifecycle changes on the password in your Terraform modules and then rotating it immediately using a Lambda is how
Yep.
it was. Okay. In this model, I hope that any sort of master user or credential can just be ignored entirely. But I'm not sure if that's how it's implemented. All right. Final announcement, just a further enhancement into how to validate what you deploy into Kubernetes and setting policies around that. For example, requiring that, maybe in your dev cluster that you never have more than 5 replicas of a given pod, or making sure that, for example, your replicas, your desired replicas is always defined as less than your max replicas. So you don't deploy something inadvertently that is an impossible state of configuration. Again, anything that makes policy enforcement easier in Kubernetes is welcome. And then because this is just a custom resource, it's pretty straightforward to put that into your Helm charts or however you deploy your Kubernetes services. All right. That's all I had in terms of announcements. Anybody else see something interesting the past week?
There are 2 really small announcements. I pasted them on Slack and in Zoom. The first one is you can now reserve MemoryDB nodes, which are 55% cheaper, something like that. There was, up to 55% savings over on demand, which is nice considering that MemoryDB is super expensive. So there's that. Like I said,
this is significant cost savings there. Yeah, that's for a 3-year reserve, I'm assuming.
Probably. I haven't looked into it, but it's welcome, especially again for MemoryDB, who, as far as I know, is really expensive. And the second announcement is also a really small thing. Compute Optimizer now supports ECS on Fargate, which means that Compute Optimizer can tell you, hey, you're using a Fargate task size of 120 gigs and 30 CPUs, and you're only using 5 CPUs and 2 gigs of RAM. Are you sure you don't want to downgrade that and save some cost? It's a nice quality of life improvement for Fargate, and I really, really enjoy this.
That's cool. And this is integrated into like AWS Health Dashboard, or where?
Compute Optimizer does publish things somewhere. I've got no idea exactly where, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah, it shows up on the Compute Optimizer page. I just used the recommendations earlier today.
Oh, no. Cool. That's a good announcement. We'll share that with our customers. Cool. Anyone else have some interesting announcements they saw from this past week? All right, we'll get into Q&A here. I only had one question teed up. Emmanuel, are you on the call today? Doesn't look like it. In Slack, he was asking a question about why his passwords were getting rotated here. But there was unfortunately not really enough information to ascertain anything. The most common reason I've seen these things happen is because missing a Terraform state backend. But if there's a combination of destruction and update in place, I'm not sure why. That would be. Anyone else have? Let's just open the mic. Anyone have any questions? Any interesting conversation topics for today?
I have a comment to something in the chat, and then I do have a question. Yes, I have played around with ChatGPT to help me do my daily work.
Yeah.
It's very important that you know what you want though, and you know what you're doing. Otherwise, it hallucinates and creates functions and things that don't exist. So yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta know
It
it.
could be some of that. I've been using it a lot as well. I think it works if you, but I think you have to, yeah, exactly. You have to kind of know how to frame the question. You have to know what the right answer should look like, even if you don't know steps, A through Z to get there. And I've been using it a lot for things like, oh, dude, yeah, it's come up before. I'm crazy about Home Assistant for home automation. I'm using it just to generate automations in Home Assistant, and it's been really helpful to figure out how to do some complex automations there. So it's not restricted to just mainstream stuff like TypeScript and C# and Terraform and things
No,
like that.
no, there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. It's
Yeah.
really going to be amazing. Hey, Eric, this is Zach. It's been a while. How are you doing?
Hey Zach, yeah, it's been a while. Good to hear from you.
So,
I did
I don't
try
know,
it.
dude. To me, it just, yeah, it's so parallel to what Terraform does for us as engineers as a tool. It allows us to declaratively state what we want without
Yeah,
really truly understanding everything in between most of the time, even though you kind of have to if you want to do it well, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just see this as being the next tool for us to wield to become like Uber engineers or whatever we're going to evolve into using stuff like this.
You know what I find weird though is that when Copilot came out, a lot of people tried it. I didn't try it because I felt weird about using Copilot for some reason, but I don't have that same emotional like reluctance with ChatGPT. And I kind of,
Right.
it's the same thing. It's really the same. I mean, it's better, but I'm not sure why I feel okay with using ChatGPT to help me and not with Copilot. It's
I do
strange.
feel a little bit guilty sending my family a poem written by ChatGPT about a hacker enjoying the holidays and the meaning of Christmas, and it ended up writing a really heartfelt poem on my behalf that came straight from my soul, I swear. So
Yeah, I may or may not have written some Christmas cards using ChatGPT this year. That's funny. Yeah, I agree with you, Isaac, on that. Like Copilot came out, also Amazon's, I forget what their offering is that also does this. And I didn't immediately gravitate to it. I guess just somehow because I could kick the tires on this more informally. And it's more general purpose. Like it's not unidimensional, like write some code for me. Is that it could be anything from like explain what this function is doing to me in plain English, which is another really great use of it.
exciting stuff. That's all. I just wanted to jump in and throw Chaos
Yeah.
Monkey into your talk for a little bit.
No, that's any other comments on your ChatGPT explorations, Isaac?
No, but I did have a more general question that is not actually tech as much as tech adjacent.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have been on this DevOps team for like 9 months now. Before that, I was just a software engineer. So I actually took on this role because I wanted to explore the cloud and DevOps more, and I've really enjoyed it. But I also recently got asked to lead my team. And I'm having two challenges with that, or maybe several, more than two. But one of them is that I am discovering that leading is taking me away from hands-on work, and I'm not ready to be in that position yet. I feel like there's still so much that I need to learn, and I'm wondering what's the best way to navigate that. And then my other is how does one be a good first-time tech lead? Like I'm all of a sudden managing my peers just a few months ago. Just last month we were all, peers, and now I'm being told that I have to do their performance reviews, and it's a whole new world.
Yeah. I'll chime in first, and I'm sure a lot of people will have opinions on this one. I think the most important thing that you need to get clear on, and perfect time to do that is now as you're doing your New Year's resolutions and goal setting, I hope, is like longer term, like in the next, 3 years, where do you want to see yourself? Do you want to be hands-on keyboard, as a career choice, or do you want to move up the ladder kind of? Typically, moving up the ladder in terms of management responsibilities, how you're going to increase your salary. Now, in IT, that's not always the case, to be honest, but for most people it is. So if that is the case, then do the exercise of working backwards from there. So if that is your longer term goal, then how do you take steps to get there? Now, it is totally respectable to say that that's just not for you. You don't want to be there. You want to be an engineer building things, physically. And if that's the case, I would respectfully just decline and express kind of what your career goals are to your manager or your new manager, so they can help you grow in that trajectory. I think it could be taken for granted by some managers that you automatically maybe want to go do that if they don't know you better. Now, on the other side, so if you do take the position, how are you going to level up on your management abilities? So this is where, just in general, if you're not reading or listening to audiobooks on a daily, at least semi-weekly basis, that's going to be a hindrance. The best way for you to excel within your career, whether it be engineering or management, is to read a lot. A popular book always brought up on this topic is The 1 Minute Manager. And I think that's a great place to start. Really quick, short read to give you the fundamentals and start developing some opinions on other materials you're going to want to read to figure out what kind of manager you want to be.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. It's weird because I don't really have the opportunity to decline this. The way I got this quote unquote promotion was that my manager got let go. And so that's also part of the reason why I do not want to go down this route too early, because I feel like part of the reason is because he wasn't hands-on enough. Hands-on enough, then it was easy to say, you're not really contributing that much value. But also I work at a startup, so things are weird right now. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the smaller the company, the more hands-on the engineering managers probably should be or need to be. But the larger the company, some of the best managers might not actually be that technical. What they're great at is running deflection, being a layer in between you and the rest of the company, ensuring that they're like your best proponent, helping you ensure that you're always unblocked and making sure to remove those blockers when they come up. They don't need to necessarily be that technical to achieve all those. Vlad, you have your hand up, and I think you shared a list of books here.
Yeah, the list of books was, I don't know, it was saved in some note. I'm sure I stole it from somewhere. I've got no idea where from. But I wanted to jump in here and say, first of all, it's totally okay for you to not accept this. It's not a promotion, it's a job change. And second of all, team lead is different from manager, which is different from product or project manager. The team lead, the technical lead, is a technical person that decides what gets implemented. They make the technical decisions, they are hands-on. The manager is the person that interviews people, approves PTO, handles compensations and reviews and things like that. And the project manager is ensure that stuff gets delivered on time and so on and so forth. These can all be combined and be done by the same person, but it's usually not a great idea. And just go into it with your mind open. Those are very different job roles. Suddenly going from writing code, be it TypeScript or Terraform, it's a way bigger change to go from writing code to managing people and handling PTO requests. That's the easiest example and the one I usually default to. Then going from writing, JavaScript to TypeScript or TypeScript to Terraform. Like there's a change going from software engineering to DevOps, but at least it's in the same range. Going from a tech role to a manager role, that's a way bigger gap. And I'm sorry for my language, but I don't give a shit if it's a startup. If you are going to get propelled into the role, they need to train you and they need to offer you the opportunity to grow into that role with guidance. Not, hey, you're a manager now, congrats. That's professional malpractice. And that's the best, the most polite word I can do.
Unless you get a lot more money. Then maybe,
Always
you know,
more money.
Oh, I mean, I wish that, you know, I could sue for professional malpractice, as you call it. But unfortunately, you're right. That's why I was saying that I'm struggling with this, because I suddenly feel like I have an entire extra full-time job. And that's challenging. But I have some learning to do.
No, I mean, that is the hard part. When you start something like that, it is doing double time, working extra to do all of it. And they need to be also okay with you pulling back, therefore, on your other deliverables that you would have ordinarily been accountable for. You can't do both. Management actually takes a lot of time. Plus, you spend even more time on meetings than you had to do before, and that's a big interrupt. There's another quote, you know, was it managers versus makers? Paul Graham's article.
there's a code switch involved in between,
Yeah,
being highly focused on super technical and, complicated processes through DevOps pipelines and dealing with people, which are even more complex. So. But it's rewarding when you do it right and you raise up a team with you. So there's always that.
Yeah, and that's how, I mean, any one of these opportunities, you should see why this is a growth opportunity for you personally and what you can get out of it and frame it that way.
Thanks, that's really helpful. And thanks for all the book recommendations, Vlad. Take a look at those.
Yeah, those are great. Cool. Open mic here. Anybody else have some questions they want to bring up? Pretty much anything goes. Doesn't even need to be DevOps related necessarily. It could be career-wise, like what Isaac just said, or other interesting questions have come up and been kind of like, hiring questions and so forth.
Hey, Eric, been a
Hey, Eric.
while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Been laying kind of low, but I got something that I've run into recently, and it's basically a dependency issue when you're initially installing kubectl, like file documents, kubectl manifests. And, in my dev environment, I guess I had maybe installed like EKS, the CRDs for ingress controller manually. But then when I went to my subsequent environments and, there's a kubectl, I guess it's file document that, so I did an HTTP pull of a YAML file, fed that into a kubectl file document, or one of those, there's two like that. And then I kept getting these, like, you're going to have to target if you want to do bullshit like this, excuse me. And then that wouldn't work. It was just like a dependency thing that I had to like kind of brute force in another way. So I was wondering if anybody knows this problem, has had it, and might have any insight.
My first reaction is it sounds like you're reinventing the wheel somehow. This is something supported. Depending on the custom resources or the operators you're using, they'll be handled by add-ons, and a lot of the EKS modules out there have support for add-ons. The one with probably the largest support is actually now Amazon's own EKS cluster module out there. Then like kubectl, like, where are you calling that from? Because like, I don't know.
Terraform. I'm, right alongside the ingress controller Helm chart and module installation.
But why are you?
I assumed that there was like a flag in the Helm chart to do CRDs as well, but that doesn't appear to be the case.
Yeah, there's Yeah, managing operators in Kubernetes is a messy business. Let me see here if I can find the great article on this for context on it.
Hey, same kind of thing with the default HTTP backend. And, you know, like I've been working towards getting Kubernetes level stuff out of Terraform, but I'm not there yet. And, you know, a workaround is like just manually install these things. It like takes a second, but that like, you know, breaks the perfect automation unity.
Hold on. So this here is a great write-up. I'll post it in the Zoom chat. Read through that to understand all the problems managing custom resources. It's by Helm itself, the community, but these problems aren't unique to Helm.
I was gonna say, it has nothing to do with Helm, you know,
Yeah.
it's just CRDs in general are a pain in
Yeah.
the butt, you know, so.
Yeah, so it's not unique to Helm. What's unique to Helm is they've been the ones that have actually tried to solve it a certain number of times and failed, and they're just like throwing in the towel now a little bit on it.
Yeah, no, this is a kubectl just to manifest. I didn't even go the
Yeah.
Helm route for some of this stuff. It's sort of
So-
like, you know, you shake it out at the end, stuff doesn't work, and you're like, that says I need to do that, even though that says it should already be done.
So I'll just show how we do it. There's going to be pros and cons with every way you do it, but this has seemed to work well enough for us, and that we've doubled down on it. So if you go to our components under EKS, here are all the custom resources that we deploy one way or another, and most of them are deployed with Helm, with Terraform. And where we need to do another resource, then we can just use the native Kubernetes provider in Terraform to provision that. Nowhere do we call kubectl directly ever. And yet we manage pretty much everything this way. Now, what we will
So you
also
don't use, excuse me, but you don't use the kubectl provider.
no, I use the Kubernetes. We use the Kubernetes provider, which is not
Okay.
the kubectl provider.
Right, so HCL codify whatever you would have in YAML, just feed it into those puppies.
Yeah, but that's so easy to do these days because you can read from file and pass it to the Kubernetes provider, and it can take that. You don't have to rewrite it as HCL.
Okay.
I'm quite sure that's possible. Now, then there's kind of like, where do you draw this line between like how much are you using Terraform for versus other Kubernetes centric deployment tools, a la Flux and Argo CD. Argo CD has you know, other stories around how to manage operators, and it's probably a more popular route for companies just looking at this from the Kubernetes perspective.
Okay, cool. I think this gives me, you know, one of the things is, as I kind of indicated by like, that says this says that, is, you know, I clearly don't have like a firm grasp on all the issues. So it looks like this will help. So thanks.
Yeah, get some ideas, look around, see what's here.
Remember to abstract in like blue-green deployments for clusters and multi-clusters. Yeah, I mean, or no, is that already baked into all your stuff?
Well, you can't do blue-green on operators.
No, that's true.
Yeah, so here's the thing about operators is, I don't know why it has to be this way. I don't know enough about Kubernetes internals, but all the resources are versioned. Like I am using Ingress and this API version. I wish that meant that was then tied to a given deployment of an operator, for example, but it's not. It's totally disregarded. So if you're using Ingress as a, you know, and your Ingress controller is Nginx Ingress, and then you upgrade that controller and something goes wrong, now Ingress is borked. And you couldn't have done a soft rollout of that either. I'm sure somebody out there has come up with some hack to be able to go around it. Maybe, you know, dynamically creating custom resource names. But then you have to deploy your app using 2 different custom resources. That's just a hypothetical. I don't even know if that's a good idea or not. But
Multi-cluster and external API gateways or something like that. I don't know.
well, so really, therefore, blue-green cluster deployments is the way to go. And that's a, whole nother ball of wax.
That's what I was going to ask about. Is like, have
yeah.
you done any of those or?
Well, yes and no, but it gets tricky. It gets tricky depending on how you use Kubernetes, and there's no one size fits all. Where it gets messy with Kubernetes is if you're using any type of volumes, because blue-green clusters doesn't play well if you're using volumes, right? Assuming those volumes aren't just for total ephemeral cached data that you just don't care about.
Yeah.
Elastic IPs, load balancers, all of that stuff. The pattern that we've done with one customer is to deploy a global load balancer, and then each cluster has its own load balancer, and then the global load balancer flips between the blue and the green clusters on the back end. But that only worked because the customer had zero persistent data in the EKS cluster. I don't know what the long-term answer is.
Kept like all session data and like cloud services or something, or?
Yeah, but I mean, this seems like a fundamental risk in you. Like, so first of all, operators are the best thing since sliced bread. It's why Kubernetes is awesome, right? It's turning Kubernetes into a framework for cloud automation where you can leverage all of that legwork that's been done for you to now create operators that then do things for you in an automated fashion on that platform. Except for there's no way to do that safely without just in prod, turn that off and turn it back on and deploy the latest version and hope that all goes well. Obviously, you're not testing that in production. You tested that first in your dev environment, your dev clusters, your staging clusters, but the day comes, you still got to do that in production. And this is why the traditional service mesh implementations scare the EBGBs out of me. When you deploy Istio as an operator in production, you need to do an upgrade. And this is like the network fabric between all of your pods and how everything works. And if anything goes wrong, it is just full on black swan, everything's down, and good luck trying to figure out what's going on in any sort of cluster scale that way.
Triggering me just saying all that.
Yeah.
To bring some happiness to the discussion, the way to usually handle this is what Eric was hinting to earlier: multiple clusters and offloading storage outside of Kubernetes. Kubernetes has I disagree with the approach Kubernetes takes around storage. But if you offload your storage, you're not going to use persistent volume. You're just going to use S3 and use persistent volumes as a cache. Your life gets so much easier with multiple clusters. The community's inherent desire to shove everything into Kubernetes without understanding the complexities there are is what leads to a lot of failed Kubernetes adoption stories. Seriously, multiple clusters with
Interesting Kubernetes adoption stories.
No,
Spin that right.
No, I've been brought into some.
Like you don't call them, you don't call them test subjects. You call them early adopters.
Tremendous failure that showcases how badly storage is thought about in Kubernetes, because there's no S3. Hey, I want to use S3. Oh my God, I'm building an app for Kubernetes. I cannot use S3, which is a really dumb statement. But if you want to use storage in Kubernetes and you're running in AWS for simplicity, you have a couple options. So you have EBS, which comes with its own per AZ particularities. You have FSX, which is just a monster, not gonna go into that. And you have EFS, which is expensive and slow. Folks don't even consider that, oh, I can store stuff outside of Kubernetes. Wow.
What are people storing in Kubernetes, that they can't be done via cloud services in most instances?
Yeah, I mean, so a very recent example for one of our customers is when you're self-hosting GitHub Action runners, it gets really slow. And if you're scaling your runners like throughout the day, they're always coming up with empty caches. So it's still very slow, and you're paying a penalty cost for that. So they figured out a solution using file-based caches on EFS, natively supported by Docker build. And they got their builds from, I forget what exactly, it was like 17 minutes, 20 minutes, down to under 60 seconds by using EFS for that.
Nice.
EFS, not S3, which is natively supported by
It's
Docker.
not natively supported, not yet, actually. That link that you showed me requires like a patched version of Docker or something to work. And so using a just vanilla Docker, they're able to specify a file system path, which is then a EFS mounted file system, shared file system, and that worked really well. I don't know, there's a lot of hate for EFS, but I haven't really seen it. Maybe for these, you know, Facebook scale companies, it sucks, but you know, if Facebook or Meta rather isn't your name, maybe some of these other, the EFS is fine. It's very easy to scale up IOPS on EFS. It's very easy to get up and running with EFS. And they've been doing more and more optimizations for EFS now, right? At reInvent, they announced improved performance for small files, which is a big issue when you're using it for a lot of things like websites or whatnot. So it's not the ideal solution, but everything is so much easier when you can just think about, just assume there exists a file system that I can mount to any cluster and you know, it has some guarantees around locking and whatnot. But yeah. So any other questions? We got another 10-15 minutes here.
I have a couple actually. One is related to something I was trying out, and I think this article I posted in the chat was actually written by someone who attends this often. Too bad he's not here, but I was wondering if anyone has tried this out. The part that I'm really interested in is down there somewhere on that page. He claims that if you set this up with SSO, it will automatically create roles for you and your member accounts. And
That doesn't sound right to me because
right, that didn't sound right to me either.
yeah.
I haven't tried that part out yet, but let me see. If you just search for enabled AWS SSO, it'll take you down to the right there.
So I mean, it's true that AWS SSO will automatically create roles and so forth, but yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Like AWS SSO is not intended for like machine level IAM roles and so forth. It's
Right.
Users, humans. So maybe something could be jimmy rigged together with it, but it's for this reason we provision all of our IAM roles for like system roles using one set of Terraform modules, and then we have a different Terraform module that manages AWS SSO, and then we let AWS SSO assume those other roles that we generated, but we never use AWS SSO roles for anything, for any automation. I don't know. I didn't think that was possible really, but
right. Yeah, I haven't tried this out either, but I saw that line and I was like, I don't think that's how it works, but I wanted to find out. Hopefully another time he's here. My other question was actually related to K8, and we are still running an old version. I think it's 1.21, and I think that's getting to end of life soon. I've never actually dealt with like an upgrade of K8. Are there any tips around that that people would like to share so that I don't totally blow up my production environment?
Yeah, I would be interested in that as well. We realize that there's been a lot of challenges upgrading between versions, and while there'll be greater standardization between those upgrades as the changes are less extreme, There's been a few big ones. So I'll just skim over kind of what we have in our own internal docs here as recommendations that give you some ideas on where to look. And then maybe those keywords will help you find guides out there. This is not public documentation right now. So one of the good things you can run is Pluto or Kube No Trouble, which will tell you if anything you have deployed is going to be incompatible with future versions of Kubernetes. So then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to upgrade those first before you upgrade Kubernetes, or you're going to be in a world of hurt. The other thing when you upgrade Kubernetes, you have to also recommend, you should also match the kubectl version with the latest version that you're deploying. It should be backwards compatible with older versions of Kubernetes, but older versions of kubectl are not forward compatible, for example. And then when you upgrade, you also need to be aware of, you got to upgrade your node pools. I believe you upgrade your control plane first and then your node pool second, I think. I don't remember exactly, but there's an order in that. And then you also got to remember to upgrade your EKS add-ons. So if you are using add-ons, things like the VPC CNI, those might not get automatically updated if you're doing a Kubernetes platform upgrade. So we've had issues around that as well. As always, check the release notes and see what they say, they call out as deprecations. And then, I'm not sure if Amazon publishes like a maintained guide or not.
This isn't managed enough. I should have gone with serverless.
Yeah, seriously. Well,
This doesn't have any major version upgrades like this. Like, it's a big advantage. But yeah, if it's EKS specifically, AWS does usually have comprehensive docs about upgrading to each next version, and they call out to specific things to look out for. Like, there have been some version upgrades that were absolutely horrible and some version upgrades that were seamless. So it depends, but try to read everything you can in advance.
Yeah. So going back to what we were talking about earlier about upgrading your operators, like this is same kind of case. Like in a perfect world, our clusters are all just cattle, right? And you can just launch another one and magically everything works. Unfortunately, that's not the reality of EKS as implemented on AWS today, and doing that would be very costly and technically challenging. It's an area I've heard only good things from Google Cloud and GKE, and you can have your clusters on autopilot there and upgrade, and supposedly it works very well. I don't have firsthand experience though. And I second what Vlad said. Kubernetes is like serverless to your developers, but not serverless to the operators. The human operators that are responsible for maintaining it. So do not take it lightly, that responsibility. I recommend, therefore, if you don't need it, don't deploy it.
Thanks. This is very helpful. I was going to offload this to someone, but it's clear to me that I need to be hands-on and really learn about it as much as I can as well. I can't just trust someone to do it.
I would not trust the intern to do this. Yeah. This is a hairy enough thing that a lot could go wrong. But yeah, definitely try out those two tools though, Pluto and Kube No Trouble. Pluto is by Fairwinds. Fairwinds, is a company built around managing Kubernetes, and they have a lot of cool open source tools. We've used Pluto for every time we do an upgrade, we always run Pluto to see what's affected.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm monopolizing the chat today, but no one else.
No, it's I wasn't expecting many to show up today, so we still got a pretty good turnout. Let's see here in the chat here. Oh, hold on. Zach Lober was recommending anyone have any experience with Spire for Kube or app workload IDs? Now, what's that about, Zach?
I was just kind of curious if anyone's done anything with it. It's one of these Kube native, distributed ID management systems, and it's at the very least it's an interesting thing to look at and watch this bearded like woodsman dude go over distributed systems and the issues you have with the IDs across them and things like that. He covers some unique issues in the realm, and you can learn some stuff. But I'm just curious if anyone's actually worked with this stuff. I just found it the other day again, and it seems like there's people who are actively part of it or using it in some ways, and it seems interesting. That's all.
It is used in production by a bunch of folks, but it requires a lot of expertise and thought put into it. It's kind of like Istio in the early-ish days, I would say, but don't quote me on that.
Gotcha.
It's interesting from an authorization and authentication perspective, but it's, in my opinion, still way too complex to run, and I would not yet feel comfortable running it. But a lot of big companies that can allocate the engineering effort have had really good experiences with them. You can, I think there was an amazing talk about one company using this. I think it was at last year's KubeCon, the US version. I could be wrong.
There's valuable input, and I follow you on that. So
Let's see here.
it's like one of
Next.
those things that has a great concept, but to actually deploy it probably requires a lot of custom dev work and stuff. So
So Eric Berg's asking ideas about automated management of Postgres Aurora users, roles across multiple similar databases. So lots of ways to do that. The way we do it is in a Terraform module, Terraform root module here, or Aurora Postgres resources, and this is how we manage users and grants and roles and things like that. So then if you're obviously using Atmos, then it's really easy to manage those across multiple similar tools because you're just doing inheritance and, adding on users here or there as you need them.
Cool. Yeah, I'll take a look at that module. Thanks.
Any other suggestions on how to do this?
I mean, I've looked, I put on my list to look at, I guess it's RDS Gateway and, IAM, authorization and stuff like that, but they seem to require users in the database already anyway. So got to solve that problem, I believe.
You're still going to be able to handle the grants and so forth. RDS IAM authentication only handles the auth part itself. And plus that's only really for human users. It's not intended for application users. So I think you're kind of back here. And it goes without saying that obviously HashiCorp Vault is a stellar use case for this, but it requires you to run Vault. So might be overkill. What else did I want to add related to this? Oh, one of the big mistakes we made in the beginning, and only fixed it relatively recently, was we had the same Terraform component, aka root module, deploying the database and also provisioning the users on the database. And that led us to this situation where we had a root module that could never be destroyed without targeting specific resources. So make sure you manage your resources out of phase with the database creation itself.
Cool. Yeah. Always a good point. I've made a lot of progress in pulling things out. In fact, deconstructing our Terralith. And in fact, just now, I took a break from my AWS 3 to 4 provider update. And was tearing out the old Postgres thing because I wrote module, because in the beginning they didn't do that. So now we've got a module. It's just some YAML.
Yeah.
Spin up a couple of clusters that way, and I finally get the rest of the DBs out of there into a completely separate stack, exactly as you're suggesting.
That's good. Have you kicked the tires yet on Spacelift notification policies?
No,
Yeah, really.
no, but I have talked to Marcin about this stuff because trying to get failure notices doesn't work. You have to think through this, and in terms of we recently got the after trigger or whatever it is, like after everything's done, but there are cases when that doesn't run. So that wasn't the solution there. And it sounds like the notifications might be, or webhooks. I'm not sure which one.
The way it sounds like now notifications are fully baked and you should be able to come up with the policies, but haven't validated that assertion yet.
I tried them out, and we don't use like Slack, we use Discord.
Okay.
But I was able to get it working to send it to the Discord webhook. They're cool. You do have to play around with Rego in the playground to get it just right.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just wasn't getting the ones when it would fail. If the job fails, I want to send an event.
I was able to get that. I might send you a snippet of what I did.
Cool, thanks.
All right. Any last question? We are at time. All right, cool. Well, thank you all for joining us today on Office Hours. We'll be back next week at same time, same place. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/cloudposse to subscribe. If you're interested in working with Cloud Posse at some point in the future, just head over to cloudposse.com/quiz. You'll book a call with me directly, and we can work through your situations to see if one of our services is a good fit for you. We syndicate all of our Office Hours episodes to our podcast. You can listen to those however you listen to podcasts by going to podcast.cloudposse.com. And then our newsletter will syndicate all the interesting announcements and news that you see or hear on Office Hours to get those in an email format on a weekly basis. Subscribe to newsletter.cloudposse.com. That's it for today. Thanks all. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Oh, and Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year.